So in the last podcast, we kind of ended with a few thoughts that you brought up that I said I wanted to revisit here in Five Friday Feedback. And the first thing that we really wanted to talk about was hurt people hurt people. And I know you mentioned that the kind of Spartan shield, as it were, that you use when someone's, being mean online, or maybe it's your family, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's someone you don't even know who's trying to attack you for what it is that you're doing. Everything we were talking about was setting smart resolution goals. And sometimes you set a good goal, one of the biggest things that are going to take you away from that is other people's opinion of that goal, other people's opinion of what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. And you talked a lot about that Spartan shield of remembering that the people that are going to try to attack you are hurt. That's the reason that they're attacking you. And I said that maybe the reason that they feel so attacked by you trying to take action to better yourself is because they know that they're not doing all that they can, that they know that they're not living up to their potential, and they have to believe that they're doing everything right. And by you showing them that there might be another way, subconsciously, it's you telling them that they are wrong and that
Yeah,
you are right.
absolutely. Your existence amplifies their insecurities that they're not enough. And when they feel they're not enough, rather than building themselves up, they're tearing you down, right? Because as we know, there's two ways to build the biggest building in town. You either tear every other building down, or you build the biggest building in town, right? And we know from life and from personal experience, being on both sides of the coin, that hurt people hurt people. Only people who are dealing with something are going to really go out there and attack someone else, right? And the thing about it is, everybody is dealing with something. Everybody you know or have ever studied or ever heard about is suffering with something. Whether that be the unknown man at the side of the corner, right? Whether it's the president, whether it's the senators, whether it's your mom, whether it's your dad, whether it's that person who looks like they have it all. Everybody is suffering with something, but it's how you react to suffering. That's what really matters, because we know that the hero's journey and the villain's journey, they're quite similar. They're both come from pain, but one gets hurt and says, I'm not going to let this happen to anybody else. And the other says, the world hurt me, I'm going to hurt it back. So it all has to do with perspective and how you see the world. I know this is a podcast of words, but make no mistake, these words can be the shield and be the sword to your life. And I think that's part of what we're going to be talking about today on this mighty fine podcast. I'm Dominic. He's Chris. We're the Fi Guys, and this is our Friday episode. Let's get right into it.
Yeah. So I want to revisit a little bit of what we talked about there of why people feel they need to attack rather than just being okay with you living their life, because you living your life trying to better yourself literally has nothing to do with them. They don't have to feel anything, but they do, and we all do. And I felt it before. You see your friend, your neighbor, they get the new car, they get the new thing, and you're like, well, what's wrong with me? Why do they get that and I don't get that? And reflecting on it, what I've kind of come to over this last week of thinking more on it is that they feel that they're in their final form, that who they are today is fixed. And I kind of think of it like your brain is like an office building, and there's some executives up there, and your brain constantly wants to feel like we've made it. We've hit our final form. Like, I don't know, you're in Dragon Ball Z and like, hey, this is my final form. I don't go any higher than this. But as we learned from Dragon Ball Z, like there's always another level, and there's always another level. And that's what makes the show engaging, I guess. But for other people, imagine an office building, and in the office building, the office building, the top is your brain, and it's trying to finally get to where it needs to go. So it feels at every moment that like we've made it. We don't get any bigger than this. And yeah, I'm sure you can look back to your own self, audience member Dominic, think back 10 years ago and be like, wow, that person's a very different person. But when you think 10 years in the future, like I'm going to be the same exact person though. Even though logically you know that you won't be, you'll be a completely different person than you are now. And that's the path of growth. That's what you want to do. But your brain is saying, this is me fully formed right now. You trying to show that I'm not fully formed is you trying to attack me. And when I'm thinking about this, like evolutionarily, it's because your brain is one of the largest caloric expenditures that your body has to go through. So imagine an office building where they get the report that says, hey guys, we've hit our goals. Everyone's going to get a bonus. And actually, you don't have to work for the rest of the year. You're going to keep on getting paid. And we're going to be able to take all of this money and export it to other parts of the body. Maybe that's working, running, doing other things. And then all of a sudden, everyone gets really excited, like, hey guys, we hit it. We hit the goal. We're done. And then all of a sudden, a fax comes through or an email comes through and it goes, actually, everything you thought you knew, everything that we told you before that you were done, yeah, we were wrong. You have to go back and change all that. I think that's why it's so hard when someone hears something, when they learn something new, or they realize that they don't actually know something. What's the easier thing to do? The easier thing is to negate that. Oh, no, that's not real. I don't know it. I've never known it. That's not real. Because the harder thing is to be like, oh, well, I don't know something. And I'll ask you a question, Dominic. Do you know how a zipper works?
No idea.
Good. And you're amazing for actually being able to say that you don't know how a zipper works. I don't know how a zipper works. I mean, I think I understand it, but if you actually were trying to sit me down and like, hey, explain the mechanics of how a zipper actually works, I'd be like, I guess I really don't know. But how many people out there are like, oh yeah, of course I know how a zipper works. And you tell them like, well, how does it work? Well, I mean, it just like they mesh and then they're good. And you push them a little bit more, you push them a little more. And then eventually either they're going to say, I guess I really don't know how a zipper works. I should go find that out. Or what do? They attack you.
Yeah.
How dare you attack me? This is my final form. I can't get better. And it all comes down to that fixed mindset versus that growth mindset. Yep. If you're fixed and you're saying, this is my final form, I can't get better, then you're saying that I'm not enough and I'll never be it. But if you have a growth mindset, then you have the thought of, oh, I'm the constant learner. You just showed me a hole in my game. And now I can fill that hole. Thank you for your ability to show me that.
100%. And I think it's living two different lives, right? You have someone who has a fixed mindset, one that stays the same. I'm not saying values change. I'm saying there's no growth. They have all their thoughts already thought, all their ideas already planned out. They don't change. They don't grow. They don't get better, right? And it's going to be very interesting to me, for me in my own life, because in this stage of my life, I currently have a growth mindset. But will I have it when I'm 60 or 70? That's a different story. Because to me, staying the same is death. Growth is the only future. Forward is the only path. And progress cannot be stagnated. That's why we continue to have these podcasts and see more of what we can discover about the mind, about finance, about health, wealth, relationship, everything.
I think it's difficult for people to feel that they've ever made it. They always feel like, oh damn it, like when does it end? When does it end? And I think that's so scary for people to have that thought that maybe it never ends. And that is the point of life. You know, we take this to like a financial realm. Obviously, we are the FI guys. Imagine having the thought in your brain that like, oh, I can't be good with money. My family's not good with money. I'm never good with money. I can't save money. I can't be wealthy. I can't be these things. And, you know, like you said, I already have all these thoughts. I already have all of my ideas. I can't learn anymore. Of course, you're never going to achieve it. And I always used to tell my friends a joke because, you know, I read a lot. And they would always be like, hey, did you read this book? Have you read this book? And I always be like, you know, I only read books I've already read. I can't grow. I only read the books I've already read. I only watch the movies I've already seen. Like I'm like, this is me. I'm fixed. It's not going to change. And one thing that is kind of scary is I think you more than me, you were kind of taught from a young age, maybe from your parents, maybe from whatever, to have a growth mindset. I think you kind of came more prepackaged. I came with a fixed mindset, and it's been very difficult. It's something I have to work at every single day to remember to have a growth mindset that I'm not at my final form. I need to keep growing. I need to keep getting better. And that's where, you know, I mean, you and I have known each other for the past 2 years-ish now, year and a half. And you've seen how much I've grown just in this past year. And I've seen how much you've grown. And it's kind of cool to be able to look back at that because you have the goals that you have everything. You're seeing it. You're seeing the metrics change. But one thing that scares me when it comes to that growth mindset, and I see it in myself, is that in some ways I have a growth mindset in some areas, but in other areas I'm very, very fixed. And I think it's kind of scary of like, oh, how much things do I think I have a growth mindset in, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And how much am I holding myself back subconsciously because there's something inside of me that says like, oh no, don't even look over there. Like you're already fully formed. You can't get any better. Don't even look over there. Like that's not for us. That's for other people. So that's something I'm wondering. I'm contemplating.
I think it's a very fair thing to contemplate. I think the assumption of us is, since we are good at one thing, we're good at all things. It'd be like me saying, well, Chris, you're good at jujitsu. You're a good fighter, right? Maybe. Yes and no, right? Well, I have a growth mindset. Yes and no, right? Do I believe I can be great mathematician? Maybe, maybe not, right? Maybe I have fixed perspectives in my world based on my own understandings, based on my own experiences. And what makes that so interesting is, well, why were those in place? Why do I believe that I have a fixed mindset in one area and not this area? Was it because I've been defeated in that area and I no longer believe I can rise from the ashes? Or do I believe that I was pre-programmed never to be good in that area? Both of them don't align with the growth mindset, though, because a true growth mindset believes that I can get better in every area. And I believe that. I believe I can do anything. I can be anything. If there was ever a quote of my childhood that always rang true, it was, you could do anything, you could be anything. You could do anything, you could be anything. You could be anything, you could do anything. It just takes work. It takes hard work. And if you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to reap the reward. And that's how I was raised. I don't know if it holds the same value because it was pre-installed in me from a young age versus someone who chose to have the growth mindset like yourself, Chris. I'm not sure. I wish I could take myself out of my consciousness, go into yours, and see how much you value your growth mindset versus mine. See how it operates. It might be two completely different operating systems. But I think for people on this financial independence journey, I don't think a fixed mindset is what's most optimal. I don't think a growth mindset is required, but I think it's definitely a beneficial thing to have in life. You know, you said something like, it never ends. And that's the most beautiful sentence one can ever hope for. Because imagine having a growth mindset and you meet the end. You're at the end. You peaked in everything. What's left? You know? And I think it's beautiful that the grind never stops. You can always be better. And that's the beautiful thing about life. I'm not a good cook. I can go take a culinary class. I can master my skills as a chef. I'm not good at this. I can work towards that. And to me, growth is life. Stagnation, I mean, in business, stagnation is death. Would you agree, Chris?
I would say in physics, stagnation is death. In nature, in all things, you mentioned something there about your mantra growing up as a child, and I'm sure it's something your parents told you. You can be anything, you can do anything. And I think that I want that to be true. And I always say that you can do anything, you can be anything, you can have anything, but you can't have everything. Whatever you choose to focus on, it means that you're giving up something else. To say yes to one thing is to say no to all other possibilities. And, we were kind of talking about you can be anything and you can do anything. And that might be true, but simultaneously, it might not be true. We have to remember that we work in the realm of physics. There are people that, you might be born 4'4". Maybe you were born 3'4". Maybe you were born like legitimately a small person. And, your goal, your thing that you want is to be playing the NBA. And, you can try as hard as you want, but there's no way you're going to be able to dunk. It's just physically impossible. When it comes up to the physics of life, it's hard. And I always remember this quote that I've always liked. It's, you can't make a racehorse out of a pig, but you can make a really fast freaking pig. So maybe sometimes your genetics and things aren't aligned with what it is that you want out of life. But that doesn't mean that you just stop. It means that you continue to grow to become the best whatever you are. And maybe it's not the dream that you want, but we shouldn't should ourselves into things. Because there's the way the world actually is, and there's the way that the world is in our brain, and how the way we want things to be, the way things should be. And that's when we experience all this suffering, is when our expectations of the world don't match the actual physics, the actual reality. It kind of comes back to that non-judgment that we talked about earlier in Monday's podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wonder how much skepticism and optimism play into the growth mindset. Do you find that knowing your history, I know a little bit about you, right? You used to be more skeptical. Still are, right? Still are, but you've also grown from the person you were, maybe an angry version of yourself, a lesser version of yourself, right? A more beginner stage into a greater version of yourself, the one who takes on the growth mindset, who looks fear in the eyes and runs towards the danger, who does things that he doesn't want to have to do, who wakes up early, who gets after it, right? Who takes care of his family, right? You find that since you've been on this growth journey, you've become more skeptical or more optimistic? Have you clung to your upbringing more, or have you released it? And is that the goal, to release it and become more optimistic? I'm just trying to understand a little bit more of how that plays in the growth mindset.
One realization that I came to recently, and we've talked about this briefly, and the differences, I think we've talked about it off the pod,
Mhm.
and the differences of Eastern religions and Western religions. In Western religions, think of Catholicism, Christianity, whatever you want to do. It's that you come into this world fundamentally not enough. You come into the world fundamentally flawed. And you have to find the right way. You have to find the Lord, find whatever it is in order to be enough, to be whole, to be a whole person. The Eastern traditions are very different. You come into this world perfect, a fully formed being with perfect wisdom, perfect divinity. And then, due to your genetics, due to circumstances, due to your family, due to culture, due to all of these things, you pick up. There's not a perfect translation for this word since it is Sanskrit, but we're going to call it illusions. You pick up things that begin to taint your divinity, your perfection. So, to answer your question, as I've gone through life, I've kind of come to the realization, or maybe I'm realizing more and more, that the goal of life is to continue to grow and learn. And then once you've learned, to unlearn all things. And you have to learn enough to feel comfortable enough to know that the right answer was always inside of you, that there's a part of you, a consciousness, a something, and I don't know what to call it. I think it's ineffable that there's something in you that has that divine wisdom and is always true, because it's so difficult, because no one really knows. You can ask everybody, what's the meaning of life? What are these things? And there are people that are going to say to you very matter of factly that, oh, obviously it's this, obviously the right answer is this, obviously it's that. And a lot of us will go, because we don't know, right? Okay, well, this person seems really, really sure about it. And I guess that sounds good. So I'll go that direction. But in truth, no one really knows. No one really knows what happens after death. You know, I teach jujitsu, as you know, and I'm very blessed in that in the class that I have, there's actually a black belt who comes, and this black belt has been training no gi jujitsu for years, but now he wants to learn gi jujitsu, how to train with a gi on, like that's the full,
The
like,
outfit, the uniform,
yeah, the
yes.
whole outfit, that outfit, yeah, it's like your costume, right?
Yeah.
So he wants to learn that. So it's been astounding for me to be able to have this gentleman who's been doing jujitsu for decades now, and he is so willing to learn from me, someone who's only been doing it for years. Like this guy he could destroy me if he wanted to. But from in jujitsu, maybe I'm not the best. I can't stand up to him. But if we were wrestling, that's where I have the advantage. And he's willing to listen to me and learn from me. And I'm willing to learn from him. And the more that we learn from each other, we realize that we're both right. His way of doing things is correct.
Yeah.
And my way of doing things is correct. And we both kind of have to listen to our inner wisdom as what is right. And what's so difficult is people go through life and they'll tell people like, hey, this worked for me. But they don't realize that it only worked for them because of their genetics, their situation, the people around them. All of these things, factors, made it so that it worked for them. And I think it's scary for people to realize that it might not work for you because of all those things that we just talked about. And that might scare that person to say, oh, does that mean that I was wrong? Does that mean that the choice that I'm making right now that I thought worked for me, that it actually isn't working for me? and that I'm wrong because no one actually knows what the future holds, despite what
Mhm.
people want to tell you.
Even the masters need coaches. I think on this journey of growth, you understand that ego is one of the most disgusting traits of a human. So useless. Floyd Mayweather has boxing coaches. John Jones has MMA coaches. Khabib, they all have coaches, right? But if they let their ego get the best of them, I'm the best in the world. I've never lost. I've gone toe to toe with the best of the best. I've never lost. What can a coach teach me? He's not in the flame like I'm in the flame. Ego is the downfall of most. And like Icarus, you'll end up flying too close to the sun, burning your wings off and destroying yourself. I think on this journey, the more you learn, the more humble you become, and the more sympathetic you become to everyone around you. And the taller up the mountain you go, the more you can realize where people are on the mountain because you've been in their spot. You've been the angry person, the one who blames everyone. You know, you've been the person who, it's the world, man, the world's out to me. I got dealt a bad hand. You know, we've all been dealt a bad hand. Everybody's been dealt a bad hand. It's all about perspective. Even the richest of the rich been dealt a bad hand. Oh, wow, I inherited $200 million. Now everything I do in my life, even if I become the most successful person in the world, they'll always equate it to daddy's money. Behind every pot of gold is a dragon, but behind every dragon is a pot of gold. And life is about perspective and shifting the way you look at it.
You know, we talked a lot about sympathy there for feeling for that other person, the sadness of what it's like. And my studies of Buddhism have really taken me a lot to Tenzin Gyatso, who is the current Dalai Lama, the current reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. I don't really believe that he's reincarnated, but whatever. He's a great spiritual leader, and he has some great truths. And his biggest teaching, the thing I've taken from him, and that I try to envelop into my own schema of the way the world works, is compassion. And you use the word sympathy, I'm going to use the word compassion. And that what you see other people who are suffering, who are going through these things, you can be angry at them. You can have all these feelings. But I think when you realize that compassion itself and realize that, oh, they're a person just like me, who are flawed, just like me, who came into this world fundamentally perfect. And because of their situation, their circumstances, their genetics, things that they had zero control over. You come in as a baby, you have your genetics that were done, that were dealt to you from millions of years of evolution. You came to your parents that you did not choose. Your parents came from parents that they didn't choose, and on and on and on. And now you see that this perfect person is screwed up. And they're screwed up because of things that happened to them. And then that gives you that sense of compassion because you see yourself in them. Because if you were them,
Yeah.
if you were born in that situation, in that time, with their genetics, you would be them. And once we begin to see that, like everyone walking around, all the adults, all the people that you look up to, all the people we aspire to, people that we want to be, the people that we don't want to be, they're you. And and they are me. We're all the same person, just in different situations, different circumstances. And I think once you're able to lead that and say, like, oh, it's kind of like a kid, right? Like you have your own kid. One of the
Mhm.
hardest things for parents to deal with is watching your kid suffer. And the reason for that is because that is you. Like it is genetically you. You're watching yourself suffer and you want to protect yourself from suffering. But you know that that is not you. It's its own individual person that needs to go through this suffering, that needs to go through that growth. That's why it's so hard. And I think we need to extend that compassion that we have for our own children, for our own kin, to all people. Because at the end of the day, if we were on a spaceship, say the Starship Enterprise, and we're flying through space, and somebody in the engine room says like, "Hey, stuff's really bad down here." Would you on the bridge be like, "That's too bad. You guys have to deal with that. Like, we're not going to help you. Like that's a you problem. You need to fix that." And we're not even going to help. We're going to make it worse for you actually because you asked the question. And I think if you take a wider perspective, you realize that that is our existence.
Mhm.
We are on a rock hurtling through space at millions of miles an hour. We are on the Starship Enterprise. But we look to everyone else, our crew members, and we see others, people that are trying to take from us. But at the end of the day, we're all on this rock together. When you take that wider perspective, you realize, like, oh, we are all interconnected. When you go into space, you see the world without borders, without these fake lines. that we have constructed, all people, doesn't matter what color, creed, belief system you have, we all come from the same thing. We all have the same brain. We all have the same genetics. We might have different abilities, different skills, different everything. All of these things are unlockable to all of us if we had that person's genetics, that person's upbringing, that person's time.
I'd like to move on and talk about the book, Do Hard Things. I know you wanted to
You
get to that.
know what I'm going to do
Okay.
is, in the interest of time of our audience member, we will do an entire podcast next week on the book Do Hard Things
Love it.
by Steve Magnus, because I can already tell based off where we're going with this that this is probably going to be a long conversation. So I think it'd be good because this week was all about setting smart goals. This next week will be about redefining what toughness is. What is doing hard things in the modern age? And we'll talk about the book. So please look forward to that. I say for right now, in the interest of our audience time members, because we already went over on Monday, let's move on to Five Friday feedback. I hope thus far, listener, that you've gotten some value out of this. I know we're kind of moving away a little bit from finance, but please know that all these things are interconnected.
Yes.
Getting better in anything is getting better in everything. And I know if you come here just for the finances and now you're saying like they're talking about philosophy and compassion and all this stuff, what does it have to do with money? Like, tell me where to invest my money. This probably isn't the podcast for you. But if you want to learn, to grow, to become a better person, because that is what financial independence dictates for you, it's not the knowing specific knowledge. Personal finance is far more personal than it is finance. I can tell you all the secrets. I can tell you what to invest in. I can tell you how much money to save. I can tell you all these things. But if you don't put them into action, if you don't believe that it's possible, if you don't believe that you're worthy of it, none of it matters. So please like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave us up to a 5-star review. I know we're doing really well on Apple and Spotify, and I can see that our downloads are getting really big, but you guys aren't subscribing. So please subscribe. And it's not for us. It's not for our egos. It's so that we can reach out to more people. We can bring better people, better guests on for you so that we can discuss with them and then we can discuss what they bring to us for the audience members.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here with us.
Absolutely. So with that being said, very excited for next week's podcast. So yeah, like Chris said, make sure to subscribe because truth be told, stuff like this, stuff we're talking about, if it's not rehearsed, if it's not repeated, it fades. Right? And we want it to stick with you. And that's why we do a Friday episode to recap Monday's episode, trying to get it to stick with you.
You know, and I think it's so, you know, one of the things that you and I have both internally struggled with regarding the podcast is our podcast is so different than other podcasts. And we have both struggled like, is that a bad thing? Are we doing something wrong by us doing something different? As a guy who's in finance, is it okay for me not to just talk about the numbers all the time and to talk about the feelings and the things? And, you know, I use the word with you, it seems very feminine because I didn't have a better word to use than like, it's just not masculine. I don't know what better words to use. It's not left, it's not right. And, you know, we both came to the conclusion that we're just going to be us. We're going to do what we think is best. And if people want to listen to it and say, oh, that's not what I want, that's totally fine. But I don't think there are enough men out there who are comfortable enough with themselves to admit that they don't know what they're doing, to admit that they're trying to figure it out too. We have ideas. I have ideas of what I think is going to work out, but I don't truly know.
I agree. And that's where ego plays in, right? I know plenty of men. If I ask them a question, they don't know the answer. They will straight up lie. They will straight up tell me this is no, yeah. So this is how this works. Total BS. It's total bull. One of the greatest skills you can have, and there are many great skills. So this definitely isn't the top one, but one of the greatest skills you can have is being comfortable with being the idiot in the room, because at least you are willing to learn.
One thing that I love about children, when I used to coach kids for jiu-jitsu and I used to coach wrestling and I used to be a swim instructor, I used to be with kids a lot, is when you ask a kid something that they don't know, they will tell you up to the limit of their knowledge and then they will just stop talking. It'd be like, oh yeah, it'd be like, why does the sun go up? Oh, because like it rises over there, and then they just stop. Like they realize that they don't know what they're talking about, and they stop. Only us adults, because of our egos, because of our enoughness, because of the wanting to feel that we are in our final form, do we just start to wildly conject, and I'm guilty of this too, so don't think that I'm perfect. Just wildly conjecture of like, oh wait, and it's so funny as a financial advisor to talk with people about finance, and they're like, I'll ask a question, and because people are afraid to look silly, they'll just start wildly saying random words that like, oh yeah, because of beta alpha algorithm, the Fibonacci circles, and then by the end of it, you're like, you don't know what you said. I know what you said, and what you said doesn't make any sense because you're just saying stuff and you're hoping that it sticks rather than just admitting that I don't know. Can you teach me so I can learn and I can grow and I can become a better person?
Yeah.
You
And
can't fill a
only
cup up that's already full.
truthfully, truthfully, only those who are willing to grow will judge you. A millionaire will never judge you for starting a business. Someone who's enlightened or on the path of enlightenment will never judge you for being and asking dumb questions, right? We understand that, for man to conquer himself, that is the noblest of victories. And it's not one that's easily won. Don't be afraid, is all I tell you. So often we confuse fear and danger, when in reality, how many hours of your life, Chris, have you been in danger?
Real danger.
I'm danger, real danger.
If you add it up all the time, maybe an hour,
Maybe an hour, right? And if you go on your phone, guys, you ask yourself, go on Siri and be like, hey, Siri, how many hours since the conception of my birth? How many hours since September 24th, 1998? Don't confuse danger and fear. We too often live in fear. I've done it. I've lived in fear. I currently live in fear, something I constantly battle with, right? But to conquer my own mind is the greatest victory of all. So I implore you, never stop growing, never be afraid, and just do it. Just freaking do it, guys. Just freaking do it. So, any final thoughts on that, Chris, before we move on to viewer mailbag?
No, that was beautiful. I'm excited to hear from our viewer and see if we could help them cultivate this mindset as well.
Beautiful.
Maybe they already have it. I don't know. Let's see.
Maybe they do. Maybe they do. We're going to find out. We're going to find out right now. So, welcome back to viewer mailbag. This is our 5 Friday feedback viewer mailbag. Soon to be divorced, stay-at-home mom. Ooh, that is the title of today's letter. Howdy, Fi guys. Howdy, howdy. So, my divorce is almost official. That's where we're at. My divorce is almost official, and in the next 30 days or so, my marriage will be legally over. And I'm both relieved and terrified. After a decade together, my life is about to change in ways I'm still trying to process. The hardest part, my children and I are the ones leaving the marital home. The place that has been our foundation for so long. It's a bitter pill to swallow, especially knowing that I'm entitled to only half of the house's equity, which after debts paid off, leaves me with a lump sum of $38,000. But here's the kicker. My ex, he will continue living in the home. Meanwhile, I'll be starting from scratch with just the amount, the alimony, the child support, and a new job that hasn't even started yet. I've been married for just over 10 years. 10 years that started out with love and a growing family, but over time, I ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom while my husband took care of all the financial responsibilities. I left my job when we had our first child, and in the past 9 years, aside from occasional babysitting gigs and side hustle, my career, my financial independence was put on a hold. I never expected things to change the way that they have. But now, here I am, feeling completely overwhelmed and underprepared for what is to come. Truthfully, I'm going to put a pause right there. If you are preparing for that, that is kind of crazy. Preparing for, divorce, it's kind of a wild event. Nobody wants to get divorced, obviously. But yeah, that's tough.
I think it's also important to have contingencies, though. I mean, one thing my wife and I were just talking about this yesterday, actually, was we want to make sure that our kids never feel dependent on their partners. And like that's why one of the reasons me and my wife were together for so long before we got married is we both wanted to be stable individually And then we
Interesting.
came together as a more stable couple, because now there's never a fear of like, oh, my wife's going to leave me and I'm going to be destitute, or my husband's going to leave me, I'm going to be destitute, because we're both together and we're both financially well off enough to know that when we're together, it's not because of anyone being forced to do it. It's because we both choose to be there together. Because we can
Interesting.
both leave any day and both be fine. Emotionally, probably destroyed, but
Yeah. Financially.
financially fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a different way of
Interesting.
looking at things.
It's definitely a different way of looking at things. I never thought about it like that. I'm trying to take control, though. I've done the math for what it will take to set my kids and myself up in a new apartment. I found a place, and the upfront costs, new beds, basic furniture, and household essentials, and first month's rent, and last month's rent deposit, will come out to about $8,000. A lot of cheddar cheese. So
How
that
many
leaves,
kids she has?
dude, I don't know. Because I don't know. 8,000 is too much to spend there, truthfully.
Well, it depends on what kind of place she needs to get. Like, imagine most rent right now is $2,000. You know, if you have to get like a 2 bedroom, it depends on the like here in Arizona. So that's 4,000 of it already taken up just by the rent. Now we're talking 4,000 for furniture and stuff to kind of make it a home. I don't know. It depends on what country, depending on what part of the country she's in too. There's a lot of factors we
So
don't
many
know enough.
variables. So many. So that leaves me with roughly $30,000 to make it all work. But this is where the uncertainty creeps in. I've never had this much money all at once, and I'm afraid I won't see this kind of sum for a long time. Everything I've been working towards has been focused on survival, on making sure my kids are okay. But now I need to figure out how to make this money stretch. How do I use it wisely for the future? And how do I not blow it all before I get my feet underneath me? The fear of making a wrong move is paralyzing. I don't have credit history to fall back on, and my work experience is pretty much non-existent for the past decade. I'm essentially starting over, both professionally and financially. And that's really weighing on me. To top it off, I've never been one to handle the finances in my marriage. That was always my husband's domain, so the idea of managing this sum is both liberating and terrifying. To get a sense
Before
of,
we, before
go
we
for it,
go on,
please,
I
yeah.
think this is why it's so important for both couples or both people in the relationship to not have to be the master of everything, but to at least have an understanding. You know, when you're a leader, which you are in your household, if you're the husband, the wife, the partner, whatever you want to call yourself, you are a leader in the household. And a leader on a battlefield, a leader in an office, a leader in anything, doesn't need to know every single job and every single detail of every job, but they need to know enough that if they're put in the situation that they need to take over for that job, that they can at least stand their ground for a little while. And what I'm seeing thus far is that she has made conscious decisions. And unfortunately, this is the way things have been for a very long time, in that, you know, oh, woman stays home, man goes and works. And this has led to a lot of abuse for a lot of years. And thankfully, things are changing now. You know, women are becoming more, for lack of a better term, liberated from the gender norms of what have been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing in a lot of ways. But it's just so important that we remember that this sucks. And you made choices all along the way to put you into this situation. I'm not blaming you as the victim. You definitely sounds like your husband's probably a piece of work if he's kicking you and your kids out. And you were there the entire step of the way to get to where you are now. That doesn't mean that you're at your final form. That doesn't mean that all hope is lost. But you put yourself into this mess and you could pull yourself out of it. I truly believe that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, getting back to it, to get a sense of what the options are, I've opened up a bank account and met with someone at the branch. They suggested I open a money market account with $25,000 of my lump sum, since that's the minimum required balance. They mentioned a 4.2% interest rate, though not fixed, and offered to connect me with financial advisors that could help me grow my money. Sounds tempting, but honestly, I'm not sure if this is the right move, or if there's something better out there for me in my position. I don't want to make a mistake and lose the little financial cushion I would have had. But right now, my biggest fear is making the wrong choice. And with no real experience in handling money on my own, I feel lost. What are my options to stretch my money as far as possible? And how do I use this fresh start to set up something stable for me and my kids? Should I stick with the money market account, talk to the financial advisor, or are there smarter moves I should consider? I'm asking for help because I really don't know who else to turn to. Any advice would mean the world to me right now, and I thank you for that. From his control to my own command, I'm taking charge with a steady hand. I like that.
This is a rough one. Okay.
That is.
This is a really rough one. There's a lot of stuff that I wish I knew more about to be able to help you a little bit better. Before I get into my thoughts, Dominic, do you have any initial thoughts, anything that you want to bring up?
I think it's important as a mother to be strong for your kids, but I don't think there's anything wrong with a dash of reality. I'm not sure how old they are, but I know that they understand that things have changed. I think as a son, seeing your parents become human is not a terrible thing. If you look up to your parents as the rock, the unshakable foundation, the hero in the story, I think that's beautiful. All heroes fall sometimes, but it's what the hero does next that solidifies them in glory. And clearly, you've fallen, but that doesn't have to be the end of your story. And I think being the hero to yourself, to your family, to your future is important to you. My advice isn't financial advice, but it's to remember that the decisions you make, your children will remember. Maybe not all of them, but make sure the decisions you do make, you're proud of and you stand by them.
That's a good sentiment. The first thing I'm going to talk about before we get into the financial stuff is you're 30 days out from your divorce. You're going through one of the largest and most stressful life changes that a person can go through. And from what it sounds like, your husband was a piece of work. I can't imagine someone staying in the house and sending my wife and kids out and knowing that my wife doesn't have enough to care for herself. And if you don't like her, your own kids. I don't know what kind of a monster, I have to use the word monster, can do that. To send their kids out into the world with a mother who doesn't know what she's doing financially and $38,000 to her name. And yeah, you're going to be getting paid child support, which we don't know anything about that yet. And just be like, well, good luck. Like that, this is a terrible situation all around. And when you're in a terrible situation, when your emotions are heightened, sometimes the worst things we can do is just start making moves, especially moves that you can't unfix. When you go through some doors, there are things that close. In finances, it's not always forever, but it could be for a while. And right now, you don't have the ability for a while. So there's a lot of things that we need to cover here. And unfortunately, we don't have time to cover every single thing. But I want to answer her main question first and foremost. And that has to do with the $30,000. What does she do with the remaining $30,000 to allow it to stretch? How can she make this money last in her new life? And I don't think that's possible, to allow this money to last or have this $30,000 be the lifeblood that will set herself up and her kids up for a future. This $30,000 is not the vehicle that's going to get you to where you need to go. It's the lifeline that's going to get you to the point to get to the vehicle, to get to where you need to go. So first off, I'm kind of pissed off actually that she went to the bank and the bank told her to put her money into a money market account and then talk to a financial advisor. My hope is that they don't know the whole situation. This lady just comes into the bank, says, hey, I have $30,000. I don't know what to do with it. It's the bank teller's job to now say like, hey, you should buy this through the bank. You should talk to our financial advisor through the bank. But this is the importance of talking with somebody and revealing all of the information. Because we don't even have all of the information. We have some of the information. I can tell you that locking up $25,000 into a money market account at a 4.2 non-fixed interest rate would be like a terrible situation. Because if it's in a money market account, even if it's a short term, 3 month, 6 month, I don't know what it's going to be. This $30,000 is your emergency fund. You don't have a job right now. We're waiting on the job. So right now we're basically counting our eggs before they hatch. You don't have a house yet. There's so much stuff up in the air. This $30,000 is your emergency fund. This is your crisis fund. You are in the crisis. You are in the emergency. You can't be doing anything with this money. If you met with a financial advisor and they told you to do anything with this money, with the exception of keep it in a high yield savings account and be ready for the worst, that person is not working your best interest. They're trying to get a commission or get something. This is not the time of your life to be considering, how do I retire in 30 years? What do I do? How do I invest this money so it's going to turn into $60,000 the next day, and then 120, and then 240? There are people out there that will try to sell you that BS, and it never works. There are no get rich quick schemes that actually work. All things in life come at a cost. Nothing is free. So when it comes to your financial options, is there a more lucrative alternative? Yes, there is for the $30,000. You can invest it, you can do things. But right now, based off your short-term needs, what's most lucrative has nothing to do with this. Personal finance is far more personal than it is finance. The money is great. The money is good. The money will help you. But right now, you need to focus on you. And locking up this money and hoping that it's going to grow and be this magical thing is not it. I could tell you the perfect plan right now, but you're the one who has to implement it. You're the one who has to walk through fire. You're the one who's putting not only yourself at risk, but also your children at risk by trying to maybe invest this money or make something happen. It's going to be hard. And I think we need to recognize that. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, social influencers, be like, oh yeah, just grit through, you're going to make it. You'll be fine. And I do believe that all these things are true. And I also believe that it's okay to, while you're in it, admit when stuff sucks. And this just sucks. And that's okay to be in that for a little while. But after you're done feeling sad for yourself for a few hours, maybe a day, you need to ask yourself, is this feeling bad for myself? Is this wasting energy on anger, on sadness, on anxiety, on fear? Is it serving me? Or is there something more I can do? Can I put this energy towards finding a better job, towards learning? And that's where we need to go to next. In order to start to learn about your finances, you need to put in work. You're already listening to the podcast, it sounds like, and that's wonderful. We are a small part in this pond. You're going to need to be reading blogs. You're going to be needing to maybe meet with a money coach. And unfortunately, all the money coach things are going to cost money. But maybe you can go to like a credit counselor or a adult learning center, somewhere to start learning these things, because you need to be the hero of the story. It sounds like for a long time, especially with your husband, I don't know the situation, so I don't want to really conjecture into it, but it sounds like you've been the victim and your husband's been the villain. And you're hoping that someone at the bank, that me and Dominic, that one of us, that somebody can just come and be your hero and save you from this. Might somebody come? Maybe. But is that going to happen to you? Statistically unlikely. And even if they did come, you wouldn't learn anything. You wouldn't grow. You wouldn't do this. Right now it sucks, but I can guarantee in 20, 30 years, if you look at it the right way, you're going to look back on this time and say, thank God for that moment. It sucked to lose my husband. It sucked to be put on the street. All of this was awful. And it brought me to where I am today. So if I was you, it sounds like you have a job lined up. That's great. That $30,000, if it was me, I would put into a high yield savings account. I know there's some online that might be getting, I think there are some online right now that are getting like 4% interest rate still. And that's just a high yield savings account. You can pull that immediately. We're not locking any money up. I wouldn't lock up anything at this point.
No.
You need a job. You need stability. The talking about retirement, the figuring out the vehicle, all that stuff, that's future you problems. That's future you with more knowledge problems, more of a safety net, all this stuff. Right now, we're talking about survival. You're talking about how do I thrive? You can't pass over the survival to the thrive. You need to survive. And that's what we're focused on right now. So you need to get educated. You need to work nights. You need to work weekends. You need to get a second job, even if it's 2 minimum wage, crappy jobs, drop the kids off at the parents. I don't know. Like, you're in such a bad situation from what I don't know. Ideally, you do have parents, you have people to turn back on. At this point, I just don't know enough information to tell you that. But You need to be the hero of your story. You need to start working. You need to start to learn. You have, I think she said 20 or 30 years with this husband who,
10
10
years.
years with the
10 years.
husband, 10 years with the husband of not building credit, not learning about money, not getting a job, not doing all these things. And at the time, all those things were right. And unfortunately, looking back on it, maybe they weren't the right thing. So you can either sit here and say, woe is me, and do nothing about it, or you can go out there, you can start to build the credit, start to build the job work history, start to build the financial knowledge. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to depend on people, but those people aren't your heroes. Those people are your guides. They're helping you along the way, but you're the hero of the story. And I promise you, you'll be able to make it through this. Know that there are people like Dominic and I know that there are people out there that care for people like you and want to help to the best of our ability. We're reading this on a podcast for you to get you to where you want to go. All these things happen to you, and you walk through the door every single time. And now it's up to you to go out there and find the knowledge that you need to get out there to get after it. You have the advent of the internet. You have this podcast. That means you have a phone. You have the internet. You have ChatGPT. You have Gemini. You have Claude. You have you.com. You have all of them. Start asking questions. Start learning. Start growing. Become the hero of your story. We're here to support you as best as we can, but we can't do it for you. And one day your kids are going to look back and they're going to say, wow, our mom went through one of the hardest things and she made it out. And your kids won't repeat those generational sins. Ideally, you'll teach your kids to be independent of themselves so that they never find themselves in this situation, so that they can be in a position of power with their relationships and they don't repeat the same thing. I don't know the kind of person your husband was, but I have to imagine there were red flags that you overlooked. And you need to get in touch with that person, that past you, and you need to forgive them for their choices so you can move forward and become the person you need to be. That's all I got.
That's solid work right there. Solid work right there. Crazy as it sounds, and it might not like it, definitely probably not going to like what I'm about to say, but the universe or God or whatever you want to say, life has blessed you with trouble. They've blessed you with a difficult situation. They've blessed you with a new chapter. And you can either look at it how you are looking at it or how you might be looking at it of woe is me. Look at the situation I'm in, victim mentality. Or you can look at it and say, I'm excited for a new chapter. I'm excited to be alive. I'm excited to have my kids behind every dragon.
Excited to be away from my husband.
Yeah, absolutely. Behind every dragon is a pot of gold. So don't forget to search for the pot of gold. And I hope you understand that reference. It's not a finance reference. It's more of a perspective reference. But that is what I have to say on that. And we wish you the best of luck. I know when a mother has kids and she's on her own, it's one of the strongest types of people out there. Can't beat them. Can't beat them. So we wish you the best of luck. You got this.
Reach out to us in the future. Please let us know. And if you need more help, you can always reach out to me. Reach out to Chris at monsonwealth.com. I won't be taking your money at this point based off what I know, and I will do what I can for you.
Yep.
So with that, let's close out with win of the week. Win of the week is very simple, very understandable based off the title, but it's a way for us to end the podcast on a happier note because oftentimes these viewer mailbags can kind of bring it down. And with it being 2025, we're in a new year. We want to end on a positive note in order to continue to bring this in.
Yep.
So Dominic, would you like to go first or me?
I'll go first. I just got to say real quick, guys, we're recording this pretty late. Chris is in his Jocko era right now. He is his new Jocko era setup, black and white, like real dark room, very moody. I love it. No, but this podcast is going a little bit long. The sun comes down pretty early around these time. But I got to say, my word of the week, I'm very excited about it. Arrives on Saturday. I got a giant year-long calendar coming for it's 3 feet by 2 feet. And I am so ecstatic about it. It's going to help me build a bigger vision and see on a bigger scale how I can attack that vision and really plan my whole year out rather than what am I doing tomorrow? I should start doing this. It's like, no. This is the whole year planned out. Have a bigger vision, have a bigger goal. That's my win of the week.
That's awesome. And I'm sure hopefully you took something from our Monday conversation, and same to you, Dominic, and our viewer.
Mhm.
So my win of the week is I told you earlier this week, or maybe it was on this podcast, the last one, that there is a black belt who comes to my classes that I teach, and we
Mhm.
both get to learn from one another and how lucky we both are. Well, that black belt taught me the other day how to use my lungs, my breath, as a weapon in jujitsu to make my chokes even stronger. So watch out if I take your back,
I love
because
it.
now it's not just my arms and my legs. It's not just my extremities. He's taught me how to use my breath to end the fight even faster, which has been pretty cool. I've never thought that, like, oh, you can, like, your lungs are a tool to fight somebody too.
Gotcha.
Besides, like, obviously your breathing, but like your breathing could take away their breathing faster.
And this isn't like a hygiene tip or anything like that. Like, this is like your
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
lungs. My breath is so stinky. It destroys
I
my
haven't
enemies.
showered in a week.
I'll never lose a fight. Should smell the stench on me. Fresh onions. No. Okay, so he taught you how to use your actual lungs to kind of help with the submission when you take their back.
Mhm.
Interesting.
I like it makes sense. Like, you can belly
Yeah.
breathe, you can
Yeah.
diaphragm breathe, or you can chest breathe. And, I know how to do all three of those breaths because of my breathing techniques. But he was like, oh, yeah. So when you're getting the rear naked choke, suck in and do a chest breath. And now just that little millimeter of it, when you're
Yeah.
talking about a blood choke,
It's
you're
the
talking about a blood
difference.
choke, a millimeter is miles. Like it could be from making that blood choke be like 3 seconds to that blood choke being like instantaneous, because blood chokes are fast. They're really, really quick because your blood, you can't fight through a blood choke. Your
That's
brain is good. You're going to pass out. You can't fight through it.
it's crazy. Crazy stuff. Well, guys, that's our win of the week, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast, every single bit about it. We will be back here on Monday. We hope that you have a very smart, you see what I did there? Smart and successful year. Little play on words on Monday's podcast. But with that being said, if you haven't already liked or subscribed to our YouTube channel, we are on YouTube. And if you are listening on one of the many platforms we do put our podcast on, i.e., Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere, any one of those, feel free to give us a 5-star review and a comment. We would absolutely love that. That would make our whole entire year. So with that being said, make sure to share the podcast with a friend, because let's be honest, going on this journey is so much more fun when you're going with a friend. I'm Dom. He's Chris. And we'll see you a little bit later.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor. It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.